Good morning, good afternoon or good evening wherever you might be watching. Jeff Hudson here from United Computer Consultants. Welcome to the complete course in Microsoft Excel. Excel, as we all know, is a spreadsheet program. It's part of the Microsoft Office suite along with Word, PowerPoint, Access, Outlook, etc. There are lots of videos available which will tell me how to use Excel in this area. But to start this course, I'd like to point out this button here, the File button. And when I click on File, I see at the bottom that there is a command called Options. And when I click on Options, up pops a window which enables me to, as it were, customize Excel to look and feel and be used as I want. So we'll look at some of the features here in these categories. In the general feature I see, for example, I can change the color scheme. So at the moment it's silver, which is the default. I can change it to black if I wanted, and if I click OK, there's my color scheme in black. So it's entirely up to you. Back to File Options, I'll change it back to silver. I could have used blue had I wanted. Now also I see here in new files, when I create them, incidentally, I'll just click OK to change that back to silver, as you can see there. So back to the options. The font is Calibri 11 by default. The font size is 11. That can be changed in here if you wish the font size to be different whenever you open a new file. Normal view is the view for new worksheets down here, and by default, whenever I open a new file, there are 3 worksheets opened for me. I can change that to more or less as I wish. I'll leave it at 3 for the time being. You can change your username down here as well. Now, formulas, just a couple of things we should look at in formulas. I notice by default that the workbook calculation is automatic. That is, whenever I change a value in a cell which is involved in a formula and press the enter key, the reworking of that formula, the new answer, will be automatic. If I want to make it manual, that means that I can press the enter key but the formula will not update. So that allows other people perhaps to check what the input is in the cells which are involved in the formula. I'll leave it on automatic for our purposes. There are various other commands down here that we'll look at more closely as the course progresses. In the proofing category, here is where I can use my word spelling, etc. Ignore words in uppercase, so on and so forth. So it's a matter of looking down there and deciding how you want the program to work in your particular case. The autocorrect options, these are very similar to the autocorrect options in Word, and when I click on them I can see here that there are various pre-designed recalculations. For example, this one here, I see that if I type in a cell the letter C with open and closed brackets, when I press enter it will change to the copyright symbol. Let's see how that works. So I'm going to say here, open a bracket, C, open a bracket, press enter, and there we are, we have the copyright symbol. So that is an option, and I'll undo that up in the top left corner. In the options I can see that there is a lot of customization that I can do. In the save category, it will save these files by default as .xlsx. The auto recovery information, every 10 minutes it will save the file so it can be recovered, and various other options which are available for you. The language, well, this one's English Australia. I could change that should I wish. In the Advanced tab, some interesting changes here are available to you, particularly this one here. After pressing enter, where do you want the active cell to be moved. By default it's down. You can have it right, up or left, but of course down will be the logical one to keep. Do you want to automatically insert a decimal point after so many places? You can change that if you wish. And various other actions. You'll notice here that there is also a blank box, in my case, zoom on roll with IntelliMouse. That means if you have a mouse with a wheel on it and you have a tick in there and that is set, then as I roll the mouse in either direction, so the zooming changes. So there we go. If you want that, then that's fine. I don't particularly like that, and I'll show you why. Back in the options, in the advanced, I'll take the tick out of there, because what I like to do is to use the view tab and use the zoom command here to zoom particularly to whichever percentage I want the screen to zoom to. So in the options tab, ladies and gentlemen, there are these various commands that you can change to have Excel work as you want it to work. So spend some time looking through. If you take a tick out, put a tick in, put a dot where it shouldn't be, etc. You can go back and change it after you test how things will look. So we'll come back and look at the ribbon and the quick access toolbar in the next lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and remember that this course will cover everything in Excel over the next lessons as they become available to you. In our previous lesson we looked at the file command. Let's this time look at the area across the top here called the ribbon, and particularly we'll look at this area here called the quick access toolbar, right up in the top left hand corner. We'll look at this area first. By default, when Excel is first loaded, you'll see 3 commands up there, and anything which appears up here is all one click. So there is a save button, an undo button, and the redo button. The undo button, of course, as I always like to say, the greatest button ever invented by mankind. So how does it work? Well, here I'm going to type the word cat, and I decide that I don't want the word cat in there. I'll undo the last action. The redo button becomes available, so I can redo the cat. Well, I don't want the cat, so I'm going to undo that particular action. Notice that this is still the active cell. If I hold down the control key and press enter, it makes it a live active cell. And as far as the quick access toolbar is concerned, if I click the drop arrow here, it says, when I hover over it, customise quick access toolbar. The customizing allows me to add other buttons. So I would suggest that you add a new button simply by clicking on it, which means that every time you click once on that button, you'll be given a new file. So let's just look here. At the moment the file is book 1. Down here I can see that there is one file open, it's book 1. But if I open up a new file with one click, I now have book 2, and there are now 2 files open. So I'm going to close that file, because that was of course just a demonstration. There are other commands that you can use to make life nice and easy. For example, if you want to open a file quickly, put an open button there. If you want to print preview and print quickly, put one of those there. And if you want to spell check quickly, put a spell check button there as well, etc., etc. If you don't see the command that you want down here, then you can click on more commands, where you'll see more commands down here. There's a whole lot more there, which can be very quickly added to the quick access toolbar. This area now shows me what is up here. So if I wanted to add, for example, a cut command, I can either double click on cut to put it over there, or one click and add, and that adds the cut command when I click OK to my quick access toolbar. So if you don't see the commands you want in the More Commands group, then if you click the drop arrow, you'll see All Commands, and there are all of the commands that are available to you in Microsoft Excel, and any particular one can be added to the quick access toolbar. That's how it works. Now, this area across here is called the ribbon. The ribbon was introduced in the release of Excel 2007, along with the other programs in the Office 2007 suite, like Word, etc. And it has made the use of these programs much easier, because previously in the very early versions we had file, edit, view, etc. across the top here, which made a drop down list appear. You had to find the command and you had to go into subcommands, etc. The ribbon makes life nice and easy. The reason is this, that there are various tabs across the top here which have particular graphical commands in them, and if I hover my mouse over a command, it will tell me what will happen if I click that command. So in the Home tab I see all of these commands available, and the commands are broken up further into groups. There's a clipboard group which contains the cut and copy in the format painter, the font group which contains font type commands, the alignment group contains alignment type commands, etc. And at the bottom right hand corner of some of the groups you'll see these little diagonal arrows called dialog box launchers, which when clicked will show you a window which looks the same as the previous versions for those of you who were used to using those and still might want to use them. Not all of the groups have those little drop arrows at the bottom right hand corner. Excuse me, but certainly some of them do. Now, as I click on the Insert tab, here are all of the commands that allow me to insert things. The Page Layout tab enables me to see all of the commands which involve the layouts of the pages. The Formulas tab enables me to see various functions or formulas. It enables me to use the Insert Function button, which is also duplicated here. The Name Manager, the formula error checking and auditing, etc. We'll be looking at all of these things as the course progresses. So as you click on other tabs, you'll see various other commands available to you in those groups, etc. So I've also added one here called the Developer tab, which enables me to create a macro, which we will look at towards the end of the course. So thanks for watching, folks. There's a rundown on the quick access toolbar and the way that the ribbons are designed and how they work. Just one demonstration there. This cell here I might want to fill with yellow. Well, I don't need to do anything too fancy. Here's a button here in the font group with a little paint box. I can choose whichever colour I want, and if I hover my mouse I will see a live preview, because you may remember in the previous lesson in the options, file options, that one of the options was to see live preview, and with that tick in live preview, that's why I see this sort of thing. So nothing happens by mistake, it's all pre-designed to make life easy for you. So I'm going to change the fill colour to red there. So there I see my cells fill with red. I don't particularly like that. I'll click the undo button. So now I've used something in the ribbon and the undo button to get rid of whatever I didn't like. If I wanted to redo it, of course I would click the redo button. Don't like it, I'll click the undo button. Okay, thanks for watching. Hopefully that's given you some idea of how the ribbon works. Nothing hard. The main thing with the ribbon is knowing where the commands are, and that only comes through practice. Hi, let's in this lesson look at the screen itself, the worksheet area in Microsoft Excel. We'll look at the row numbers, the column headings, the formula bar, and this area here, the little white area called the name box. How does it work? Well, it's pretty simple really. When I'm in a cell, the active cell is surrounded by a dark border. There is only ever one active cell in Excel, and that is the cell into which I can enter data, numbers, text, formulas, and the like. The cell has an address. In this case, because I'm in cell A1, I see in this area called the name box the address of the cell. It works just like a street directory. It is preceded by the column heading, the alpha characters across here, and they go across 16,384 columns. And the number, the row number, goes down well over 1 million rows, so you can have some pretty big spreadsheets, ladies and gentlemen. But each cell has its own particular address. So if I move away from that cell, and let's say with my mouse click here, I see that the cell address is shown to me here as a guide, but also here. So I always know which cell I'm in as the active cell. This area here is called the formula bar, in which I see the contents of cells or the formulas which are in cells, and we'll see how that works shortly. So in cell A1, I'm going to type the word cat and press enter. The active cell moves down one cell when I press enter. For those of you who watched the options lesson, you'll remember that the direction of the cell by default was downwards when I pressed the enter key. Incidentally, if I want to stay in that cell but still force the entry into the cell, I can hold down the control key and press enter. So there we go, control and enter, I stay in that cell. However, I want to type a number in this cell, so I'll type the number 9, and this time I'll press enter and I go down to the next cell, and I see that text is aligned by default to the left and numbers are aligned by default to the right. Now in this cell I'm going to type a little formula. We'll be talking at length about formulas shortly in the upcoming lessons. So all formulas start with an equal sign, and I want to say equals 2 plus 3. A nice, even, easy formula. Control enter, and the answer of course is 5 in the cell. But when I look in the formula bar, I see the formula. That's why it's called the formula bar. So anything in a cell, like the cat, will show in the formula bar as the data. The number will show as the number, but the formula shows me the result in the cell, but it shows me the formula in the formula bar. So you can always see what formula is in a cell by looking up here in the formula bar. I'll also be showing you how to view all cells on the worksheet itself to actually see the formulas in the worksheets as well as up here in the formula bar, but that's for another day. Down the bottom here we have the sheets. When you open a new file, there are 3 worksheets in the workbook. The file is called a workbook, and by default a new workbook contains 3 worksheets. That can be changed again as I showed you in the options lesson. To add another worksheet on the fly, I can simply click this button here, insert worksheet, and another worksheet will be added for me. And as I click on the various worksheets and make them active, I can see what is in the worksheets. At this stage there is nothing in sheets 2, 3 or 4, but there is something in sheet 1. So I also see a vertical scroll bar over on the right here, and I see a horizontal scroll bar down the bottom of the screen. I also see in the bottom right hand corner there is a slider which enables me to increase or decrease the size of the viewing percentage of the worksheet. We'll leave it where it is there. So there's nothing difficult about the worksheet. It's certainly a matter of understanding how things appear in the worksheets. And just to finish on the lesson, as you will be aware, I've been clicking with my mouse to move to various cells, but I can also use the enter key to move down. Each time I press the enter key, I move down a cell, or I can use the right arrows, the up arrow, the down arrow, or the left arrow to move to whichever cells that I need. The tab key always moves the cells to the right. If I hold down the shift and tab, it reverses the direction. If I press the enter key, as we saw, it moves the cells down one. Shift and enter reverses the direction. So just remember that the shift key can be used quite easily to control the direction of movement of the active cell. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. An important feature of Excel is knowing the shapes of the cursor and what happens when we use the cursor depending on its shape. Whenever I click into a cell, I can see that the cursor becomes the familiar open cross. So click away, there, etc. It's always the open cross when I simply left click away from a cell to go to another cell. If I point in the middle of a cell and hold down my left mouse button, I see that I can select other cells, and when I release the mouse button, there is still one active cell which enables me to use the open cross for data entry. If I click away, I'd simply deselect. If I make the cat in C3 the active cell contents and point at any border of the cell, I see my mouse cursor changes to a four-headed arrow. The four-headed arrow in Microsoft Windows means move. So if I hold down the left mouse button, I can move the cat to whichever cell that I wish. Thus, so what I'm seeing now, I'm simply dragging around with the cursor in the shape of a four-headed arrow. So the four-headed arrow means move or cut. But if I hold down the control key, I see a little plus next to the arrow cursor, which means that I can copy that particular cell. So remember, control enables me, when pointing at the edge, to copy that particular cell. So there we go. I'm just going to click on that cell, hold down my control key, which lets me select a non-adjacent cell, and I'll press the delete key to remove the contents of those two cells and back to the cat. This area here in the absolute bottom right hand corner is called the autofill button. It enables me to copy data, and if I drag down like that, holding my mouse down, then I can see that I have copied that information. If I hold the control key down again, I can see, as we saw before, that I can copy the selected data very, very easily. So we'll undo that last action. We don't particularly want that. Excel has been pre-programmed to recognise certain series when I use the autofill button here in the bottom right hand corner. For example, if I type January and use the autofill button down here and autofill down a few cells, I can keep going down and it will autofill like that. The same thing happens for Monday, so I can have days of the week and the like. There we go. So remember the autofill button, very, very handy. In a later lesson I'll be showing you how to use the right mouse button with the autofill button. At this stage I'm just going to select all of those cells. Remember that selecting is the golden rule of all computing: select then do. So with all that information selected, I can delete it with one press of the delete key. The last two cursor shapes that we'll look at are when I want to select either an entire column. I see that my mouse has changed to a black down pointing arrow, or I can select an entire row. And again, if I hold my left mouse down and drag down, then I can select multiple rows or multiple columns depending on where I want to start. So that's how the cursors work. It's important to understand these little issues in Excel. I know it's simplistic, but a lot of people don't understand how these things work, and they just make the use of Excel much more efficient when we understand the theories behind the way things work. Okay, welcome to the next lesson. We've looked at some of the theory behind Excel in the previous 4 lessons, but now it's time to look at Excel itself and the way that we use Excel to solve problems for us. The data that I have entered in here is, we might think of as a sales forecast for the next 3 weeks. It might be a competition to sell a certain number of washing machines, where Tom has said I'll sell 10, 12 and 14 in the week 1, week 2, week 3 period, and so on and so forth for the other 3 salespeople. Now, as the sales manager, I would like to know what the totals are. I don't want to add them up in my head or use a calculator. I'm going to use Excel. Remember, I mentioned in one of the previous lessons that the golden rule of all computing, not only Excel but all computing, is select then do. So what I want to do is to enter a formula down in these cells and in these cells so that I achieve the totals that I need to analyze the data. So the first thing I'm going to do is to add the numbers here by selecting those cells, and then I'll go to the formulas tab. This is one way to do it, and I'll look for the auto sum button and I'll click, and Excel automatically adds the formulas by looking up the cells. Similarly, I can do the same exercise here to get the totals for each week for the total number of weeks for each person. So I will auto sum, and Excel has given me the answer very, very quickly. What I can do here is to auto sum, and it looks up the column. I'm happy with its guess, and I will hold down the control key and press enter. And magically, those numbers there, adding up to 116, are exactly the same as these numbers here, 116. So Excel never makes a mistake in its adding of numbers. Now, just a couple of tips here, guys. Always create your labels first, then enter the data. In other words, I created week 1, week 2, week 3 and totals, and this information down here. Then I entered the data in these cells. Then I created the formulas. So make sure your data is entered correctly, that the formulas are working, and then you can format as you require. Now remember that one of the powerful parts of Excel, once we have our formulas established, is to use Excel in what-if scenarios. That is, I can say to Excel, what would be the effect on these numbers if Sue said in week 3 that she will sell 18 washing machines. So I click in that cell, and when I click in a cell, I automatically select the data. So I'm just purely going to change that number to 18. I'll press the enter key or control enter if you want to stay in the same cell, and watch what happens to the numbers that are affected by that particular data. So there I see that the total changed there, it changed down there, and it certainly changed here in week 3. So Excel is just brilliant at allowing me to say, what if I change the contents of a cell, what will happen to the overall result. Keep an eye out for the next lesson, because there we will look at the way that Excel handles these formulas, which are called relative references, and we're going to compare that with another type of formula that uses what are known as absolute references. Absolute references, just to wet your whistle, is where I can see dollar signs in formulas, and I'll explain why we see dollar signs in the formulas. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Hi, welcome to the next lesson in All About Excel. This time we're going to look at how Excel handles two different types of formula references: relative references and absolute references. In a relative reference, Excel in fact copies the shape of the formula when I copy it to other cells. So in this cell I want to add these numbers here and then copy that formula across to these two columns. So what I'll do in the Formulas tab, Auto Sum, by default Excel looks up the column and it says, are there 2 or more cells that I can add? If there are, then what it does is to show you its guess in a scrolling marquee. Some people call them marching ants. And if you're happy with its guess, in this case we are, I'll hold down the Control key and press Enter. Now, when I look up here in the formula bar, remember from one of the early lessons I said that when there is a number in a cell, if it's being generated by a formula, then you see the formula in the formula bar, and it says it is adding up all of the cells from B4 down to B8. Nothing in B8, so no problem there. Now what I'm going to do is point to the little button here, the autofill button, and when I see the crosshair, I hold down the left mouse button and carefully drag across through those 2 columns. And what Excel does, it copies that formula. What it's actually doing is copying the shape of this formula, because if I click on this cell here in C9, I see it's now adding C4 to C8, and here it's adding D4 to D8. So it's fine. Excel, as I said in a previous lesson also, never makes a mistake in its calculations. Now, that's relative referencing. This cell is relative to that cell, this cell is relative to that cell, and they're all relative to the columns above. Now, let's look at this one. I'm going to multiply the sales by a commission rate to see what commission is payable for these sales amounts. In this cell I'll type an equal sign, which starts off by saying to Excel, there is a formula following. Now what I'll do, I'll click on this cell, which puts the reference to that cell in the formula. The multiply sign is the asterisk, and I'm going to multiply it by that cell. So the commission multiplied by the commission rate should give me the answer for the commission. Control Enter, let's see what occurs. 1700, great. Now what I'll do, I'll follow the procedure that I followed here. I'll point at the autofill button, and this time I'll copy the formula down, and when I release the mouse button, horror upon horror, I see that the answer is 0. Has Excel made a mistake? Well, the answer is no, because if I click on that cell, remember we multiplied A16 by E15, no problem there, but in this cell it says multiply what's in A17 by E16, because I dragged down through rows. Well, there's nothing in E16, so If you multiply something by nothing, the answer is 0. So what I've got to do is to go back to this cell, and then I need to make the reference to E15 the same in each of these cells. To do that, I click on the formula bar E15 and I press the F4 key on the keyboard, the function 4 key. That puts dollar signs around both the column and the row reference. Now what I can do is to press Control Enter, no problem. But now when I fill that formula down, I see the right answers. Why? Because each of those cells, if I look up here in the formula bar, is referring to E15. So the dollar signs create absolute references. And that is why we see dollar signs in formulas. We're looking at cells which are always being referred to in that formula, or it could be that the cell being referred to is in another worksheet or file. In this case it's in the same worksheet. Now there are the two types of formula references for cell referencing. Remember, relative and absolute. The other advantage of the absolute formula, absolute reference, is this: that if somebody decides to change the commission rate, we'll say to 8%, I only need to change one cell, because the formulas have magically updated in terms of the answers in the commission column here. So again, I've used the what if situation in Excel to say, what if the commission rate was raised to a different number? What is the result in the cells which are always being referred to in that cell there. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Hi, welcome to the next lesson in the series all about Excel. This time we're going to look at some basic formatting. We'll also look at how to improve the appearance of the worksheet by inserting some rows and columns. And that's the first thing that we're going to do. Remember that the word formatting simply really means making your spreadsheet look pretty. So I'm going to insert 3 rows above what is at the moment row 1. To do that, I click my mouse in the first row, hold down the left mouse button and drag down through the number of rows that I want to insert. Then I right click and simply insert, and there you'll see that there have been 3 rows inserted above the original row 1. Now I want to insert 2 columns, so I drag through the column headings up here with my mouse in the shape of a black arrow, right click and insert, and there Excel has inserted 2 columns. The beauty about it also is that Excel has taken care of the formula references. So if I click on that cell and look up here, I can see that it's now referring to what's in column D. Previously that was in column B. So I don't need to worry about changing any formula cell references. Excel takes care of all of that when I insert rows or columns. Now, if I look at this information, I might wonder what this is about. Well, it's a sales competition. You may remember from a previous lesson it was the number of washing machines that might be sold in a 3-week period. It's a competition, and we'll use a heading sales competition. And when I press enter, there is my heading. But what I might like to do is to center it across the spreadsheet. To do that, I drag through the cells across which I want to center the heading by merging those cells and then centering the heading. And there's a command here in the alignment group which lets me do that. It's the merge and center command. Incidentally, to the right of it I see a drop arrow. Whenever I see a drop arrow, I click it to see what is also available to me. In this case I want to use the merge and center command. So when I click merge and center, there is my information now merged across those cells, and centered across the spreadsheet. Now it still looks a bit bland, so I'm going to change in this cell. Remember, I mentioned previously in a lesson that when I click in a cell that I select the information in that cell, so I don't have to drag through anything. I'm going to make that heading red, and I'm going to bold it, and I'll italicize it, and I'll make the font a bit bigger as well. I'll make it, we'll say 16. So there's my heading. While I'm here, I'll also put a border around it, and the border is found in the font group. Click the drop arrow, and I'll say thick box border, and when I click away, there is my thick box border. So immediately the spreadsheet has taken on a slightly different appearance. While I've got that information selected there, I just clicked back into cell C2, and I can see that the information is actually in C2 up here in the formula bar, and I'm going to fill it with a light shade of grey. We'll say that one there. Click away to have a look at it, and there we go. These headings, week 1, week 2, and the totals, I'm going to use this little fellow up here in the alignment group, the put them on their side command, as it were. And when I click the drop arrow, there are the various commands available to me. I'll choose angle counter clockwise, and there we go. Immediately that information has taken on a whole new meaning. Now what I'm going to do is to just do a little bit of formatting there. Right arrow, I like perhaps to be darker blue, and we'll say bold, and that will be fine. I might even want to put borders around there. So there we go. I see here now, of course, that that border extends out a bit, just a little bit too far for me, so I could solve that by unmerging these cells, by going back to the merge and center and unmerge the cells, and now I will drag across just that one extra step there and merge and center, increase the height a little bit there, and there we have my heading right across. Now still looks a bit messy to me, so it's a matter of whether you wish the this particular type of heading to have the borders. If you don't, you drag through the cells and click the drop arrow and no border, and there we are. So that looks a little bit better to me. So sometimes we do put these things in and decide that we don't particularly want them. Now while we're here, I'm going to excuse me, do some formatting down here. I'm going to say that I want those names to be bolded, also maybe blue, as it were, and I might like the borders there, we'll say all borders, and that is what happens with the all borders command. So it's just a matter of playing about with the information, using the commands available to you in the font group and the alignment group. Remember that you must select first. So having selected, you can then do things. That was some basic formatting. Hopefully it's given you an idea as to how the formatting commands work. Practice is the name of the game, of course. Try the different commands on your own spreadsheets, and you'll soon get the hang of it. Thank you again for watching. See you next time.